Have you ever wondered if the way we care for our aging population, whether it's through multi-generational living arrangements, hiring professional caregivers, or placing loved ones in nursing facilities, is truly the best solution? For years, these have been the default choices. But have we stopped to ask if they honor the dignity, independence, and emotional well-being of our seniors? What if there was a groundbreaking yet surprisingly simple approach to elder care that not only provided better support but also preserved personal freedom, fostered meaningful connections, and brought unexpected happiness into your life? In this video, we'll explore the transformative story of Margaret Davis, a spirited and resilient woman in her 70s who faced the tough realities of traditional elder care options. Margaret's journey led her to discover an unconventional yet deeply rewarding solution that completely changed the way she lived her later years. This unique approach is not only practical but also affordable and profoundly enriching, proving that aging can be a period of joy and fulfillment rather than one of isolation or frustration. By the end of this video, you'll gain a clear understanding of why the most common caregiving strategies, such as living with grown children or moving into nursing homes, often fail to meet the emotional and practical needs of aging individuals. These approaches can lead to a sense of dependence, loneliness, and even resentment. But more importantly, we'll unveil a creative, community-centered alternative that has the potential to restore independence, cultivate happiness, and bring peace of mind to countless seniors and their families. Stay with us, because the insights we're about to share might hold the key to creating a brighter, more fulfilling future for yourself or your loved ones as you navigate the challenges of aging. You'll also walk away with actionable, step-by-step strategies to bring this life-changing idea to life in your community. This isn't just another caregiving story. It's a roadmap to reimagining what it means to grow older with grace and joy. Before we dive into Margaret's story, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future videos that tackle the most pressing issues for seniors and their families. Your support means the world to me, and if you find this video helpful or inspiring, please consider giving it a like and sharing it with others. Together, we can spread the message of hope and empowerment for older adults everywhere. If you're passionate about today's topic, let me know in the comments by typing 1. If there's room for improvement, or if this isn't the kind of content you're looking for, type 0 and share your thoughts. Your feedback is invaluable as I work to create videos that truly serve you. Now, let's begin this inspiring journey into a better way of aging. Living with your children might seem like the perfect solution for retirement. At first glance, it offers convenience, connection, and a chance to be close to family. Many people see it as the ideal way to spend their golden years. But as Margaret Davis learned, the reality can be far more complicated and heartbreaking than it initially appears. For Margaret, it all started with a sudden and devastating accident. One morning, while reaching for a jar in her kitchen, she slipped and fell hard onto the tiled floor. Unable to get up, she was rushed to the hospital by ambulance, where doctors performed emergency surgery to repair a fractured hip. Her recovery was estimated to take at least 6 months, and she would require round-the-clock care during that time. Margaret's 3 adult children gathered to discuss the situation and made what they thought was the best decision. They would take turns caring for her in their homes. It seemed like a loving, practical plan, but what followed was anything but. The challenges began almost immediately, with the smallest moments of daily life becoming overwhelming. Mealtimes, for example, were a painful reminder of the unspoken tension. While her children ensured that Margaret's meals were prepared, the food was often delivered to her room with little interaction. She ate alone, isolated from the family. "It felt like I was being treated as though I had an infectious disease," Margaret confided tearfully. Conversations with her children became another source of anguish. Margaret's slower speech and difficulty expressing her thoughts led to impatience and visible frustration. Her children would sigh heavily or cut her off before she could finish her sentences. "When they were young and clumsy, not understanding anything, I never lost my temper with them," Margaret reflected. "Why now, when I've become just as clumsy, am I treated with so little kindness?" Worse still was the deep loneliness Margaret felt in her children's homes. A parent's home is always a child's home, but a child's home isn't necessarily a parent's home, she remarked bitterly. The generational divide created additional stress. Margaret was a morning person who cherished early starts, while her children and their families often stayed up late. Differences in meal preferences, room temperature, and even television volume became points of contention. Ironically, her children were also struggling. They juggled demanding jobs, their family responsibilities, and caregiving duties, which left them drained and irritable. Margaret could see the exhaustion etched on their faces and felt her presence was only making their lives harder. "Am I becoming a burden to them?" she began to wonder. The question haunted her, growing louder with each passing day. The emotional toll became unbearable for Margaret. She could feel the strain on her relationships with her children, relationships she had spent a lifetime nurturing, and it broke her heart. Eventually, she made a difficult but liberating decision. Once her doctor confirmed her foot injury had stabilized, Margaret chose to return to her own home. Her experience left her with a hard-earned lesson. Living with your children can unintentionally destroy the very bonds of love and trust that make family relationships so precious. The daily friction of caregiving, no matter how well-intentioned, leaves scars on both sides. Margaret's story serves as a cautionary tale for anyone considering this path. While the idea of living with family may seem comforting, the reality often reveals challenges that few anticipate. As Margaret would later reflect, the love that binds families together can sometimes falter under the weight of constant proximity and responsibility. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Margaret decided to return to her own home, a decision born out of necessity and the hope of preserving her relationships with her children. From this experience, she learned an invaluable and painful lesson. Living with your children can often harm the relationship on both sides. The deeper the love, the more everyday conflicts can carve emotional wounds. Margaret realized that another solution was needed, something that could provide the care she required without placing an undue burden on her family. With this in mind, Margaret decided to hire a professional caregiver, a choice many view as a practical and preemptive measure. At first, it seemed like a promising path. But the realities of hiring help turned out to be far more complicated and disheartening than Margaret had imagined. The cost alone was staggering. Margaret's first caregiver came with a monthly price tag of $2,000, a sum that quickly overwhelmed her modest budget. For someone living on Social Security and a small pension, this expense was simply unsustainable. Yet, the cost wasn't the only problem. The first caregiver quit after just 3 days, citing the demanding nature of the work. The second caregiver lasted only a week, and the third left after 2 weeks. Each departure left Margaret feeling more and more defeated. It became clear that her limited financial resources were a major factor. As a retiree with little savings, Margaret couldn't afford to offer the amenities that might make the job more appealing, such as generous meals, comfortable accommodations, or higher pay. She tried her best to treat the caregivers kindly, but the working conditions she could provide simply weren't enough. "I wanted to give them better treatment," Margaret later said, her voice heavy with sorrow, "but I just couldn't." Her children tried to help, each contributing $200 a month, but even their combined efforts fell far short of covering the $2,000 monthly cost. Margaret's savings began to dwindle rapidly, and she was forced to make another difficult decision: switch to a more limited home care service. This new service reduced her costs to $1,400 a month, offering care for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. On paper, it seemed like a manageable compromise, but the reality was far from ideal. With only a few hours of care each day, Margaret was left to fend for herself during the remaining 20 hours. Loneliness crept in, especially at night, when the house felt eerily quiet, and the fear of an emergency loomed large. "The nights were the hardest," she recalled. "I would lie awake, waiting for morning, feeling like I was completely on my own." The inconsistency of the caregivers also added to her frustration. Some services sent different workers each day, which meant Margaret had to repeatedly explain her needs and preferences. Others provided a consistent caregiver, but those relationships often ended abruptly when the worker quit or transferred to another job. Each time, Margaret had to start over with someone new, building trust from scratch. This cycle of uncertainty and detachment became a significant mental and emotional burden. Margaret's experience highlighted another harsh truth. While hiring professional caregivers may seem like a practical solution, it often fails to address the deeper needs for stability, trust, and genuine connection. The financial strain, combined with the revolving door of caregivers, left her feeling more isolated than ever. As her savings dwindled and her anxiety grew, Margaret began to wonder if there was any option that could truly meet her needs without breaking her spirit or her bank account. In the end, Margaret Davis made the difficult decision to abandon home care and move into a nursing home, a path many people consider when other options fail. She hoped the facility would provide a safe and secure environment where her needs could be met consistently. However, the reality she encountered was far from the relief she had imagined. Instead of comfort and peace, Margaret found herself facing a new set of challenges, ones that were just as emotionally draining as the struggles she had experienced at home. The truths Margaret discovered about life in a nursing home are rarely spoken about openly, yet they paint a stark picture of the limitations and hardships that often come with communal living in such facilities. Within just 1 month, Margaret realized she could no longer stay. The most difficult adjustment for her was the total loss of personal freedom. The rigid schedule dictated every aspect of her day: breakfast at 7 a.m., exercise at 10 a.m., and lunch at noon. Each activity was strictly timed, leaving no room for individual preferences. It felt like being in a prison, Margaret later shared. For someone who had lived independently and at her own pace for most of her life, this loss of autonomy was stifling. Meals were another significant issue. Residents were served a standardized menu at designated times and places, with no consideration for individual tastes or health conditions. On days when Margaret felt unwell or lacked an appetite, she was met with scolding if she didn't eat enough. It wasn't just the food, she recalled. It was the feeling that I couldn't make even the simplest decisions for myself anymore. The social dynamics within the nursing home proved to be just as challenging. Sharing communal spaces with other residents often led to unexpected conflicts. Margaret witnessed arguments over trivial issues, such as which TV channel to watch or how to arrange chairs in the cafeteria. For someone seeking peace in her later years, these frequent disputes added stress instead of relief. Privacy was another casualty. Even though Margaret was fortunate enough to secure a single room, staff members would often enter without knocking or noticing, disrupting her sense of personal space. Possessions were limited, with strict rules about what she could bring into the facility. Leaving the premises required formal permission, further underscoring the lack of control she had over her own life. Even visits from her family were restricted by the facility's rules, with designated times and spaces for interaction. It felt like every aspect of my life was micromanaged, Margaret said. Even the chance to enjoy a quiet conversation with my daughter wasn't truly mine. Living alongside residents with dementia brought additional challenges. Margaret often found herself woken in the middle of the night by screams echoing through the halls or by other residents wandering into her room uninvited. Despite the nursing home's promise of 24-hour care, the staff often seemed ill-equipped to handle such situations effectively. Perhaps the most heart-wrenching realization for Margaret was the pervasive atmosphere of decline within the facility. Day after day, she watched as other residents, many of whom were initially mobile and relatively independent, gradually deteriorated. They became bedridden, their lives shrinking to the confines of their rooms. It was like watching people slowly disappear, Margaret reflected. This stark reality filled her with a deep sense of fear and despair. She couldn't bear the thought that this might become her permanent existence. Within a month of moving into the nursing home, Margaret decided to leave. The experience left her shaken but resolute. She would find another way to live out her years, one that allowed her to retain her dignity independence, and sense of self. Margaret's journey serves as a sobering reminder that, while nursing homes may seem like a safe and structured solution, they often come with significant emotional and psychological costs. Her story underscores the need to seek alternatives that prioritize not just physical care but also the personal freedom and humanity of those in their later years. The financial burden of the nursing home was another insurmountable obstacle for Margaret Davis. Even in a mid-range facility, monthly costs ranged from $3,000 to $4,000. Her Social Security income and modest pension barely scratched the surface of these expenses, forcing her to dip into her dwindling savings. The alternative, relying on her children for financial assistance, was something Margaret couldn't bring herself to do. "I can't bear the thought of ending my life this way," she said. After just 1 month in the nursing home, Margaret decided to leave. But leaving didn't resolve her predicament. "I can't live on my own," she admitted, "but I also can't rely on my children anymore." It was a desperate and uncertain time for Margaret, but what came next was nothing short of extraordinary. One day, while returning from a doctor's appointment, Margaret crossed paths with a young couple who ran a small convenience store at the base of her apartment building. Sarah and Mark were always kind to her, offering to help carry her groceries up the stairs or assisting her into the elevator when her hands were full. Their small gestures of thoughtfulness began to lift Margaret's spirits, filling her with a sense of warmth and connection she hadn't felt in a long time. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment "2" below to let me know that you are still here with me. As the days passed, a bold idea began to take shape in Margaret's mind. What if I asked Sarah and Mark to help me with my daily needs? The thought seemed unconventional, even a little risky, but the more she considered it, the more it made sense. Summoning her courage, Margaret approached the couple with her proposal. "I was wondering," she began hesitantly, "if you'd be willing to help me out a little each day. Maybe with shopping and preparing meals? I can pay $900 a month." Her suggestion was simple but revolutionary. Margaret explained that she didn't need anything elaborate, just light meal preparation twice a day and help with basic housekeeping tasks. She assured them it would only take about 3 hours a day and wouldn't interfere with running their store. For Sarah and Mark, the offer was immediately appealing. The extra income was significant for their modest household, and the flexible hours made it easy to fit into their existing routine. They agreed without hesitation, and from that moment, Margaret's life began to transform. Each morning, Sarah or Mark would arrive to prepare Margaret's breakfast. They would chat casually about the day ahead, sharing little stories or news. In the evenings, they'd return to prepare dinner, tidy up, and talk about worldly matters or share a few laughs. It didn't feel transactional or impersonal. It felt like family. The greatest difference was the quality of the relationship. Unlike professional caregivers, who often came and went without forging personal bonds, Sarah and Mark brought a sense of warmth and familiarity that was deeply comforting. Margaret no longer felt like a burden or a task to be managed. Instead, she felt cared for in a way that respected her independence and dignity. Unexpected benefits also began to emerge. The couple's regular visits established a rhythm in Margaret's days that had been missing since her accident. The simple joy of anticipating breakfast in the morning or an evening chat gave her a renewed sense of purpose and connection. "I never thought there could be such a comfortable way to spend old age," Margaret later said with a smile. This arrangement wasn't just practical. It was deeply human. It brought back the sense of community and mutual support that Margaret had been yearning for, offering a path forward that was both affordable and emotionally fulfilling. The solution she stumbled upon turned out to be the best decision she had made in years. A year had passed since Margaret Davis first enlisted the help of Sarah and Mark, and her life had been transformed in ways she never imagined. As they continued to assist her with meals and light housekeeping, Margaret's gratitude grew. One day, feeling overwhelmed by the couple's kindness, she made a proposal that touched their hearts deeply. "If you continue to take care of me for the rest of my life," she said, "I would like to give you $10,000 as a token of my appreciation." Sarah and Mark were moved to tears. It wasn't just the money, it was the recognition of their unwavering commitment and the trust Margaret had placed in them. What made this arrangement so brilliant was its naturalness. It wasn't an imposition, nor was it an excessive burden. The balance between independence and support created a space where they could care for each other without losing their sense of individuality. This was something traditional care services rarely offer, a relationship built on mutual respect and understanding, rather than a strict professional dynamic. Now, you may be wondering, how can you implement this same method in your own life? Here's how to get started with concrete, actionable steps. Concrete steps you can take today. Margaret's success didn't come overnight. It was the result of a thoughtful, step-by-step process built on trust and mutual respect. If you want to create a similar arrangement, the key is to start by building a genuine, natural relationship before ever bringing up the topic of caregiving. Step 1. Find the right neighborhood store. Begin by seeking out a small, local store in your neighborhood, a family-run business, such as a pharmacy, grocery store, or convenience shop. These types of stores are often owned and operated by a couple or a small family, making them ideal for this kind of arrangement. Because the owners are actively involved in the day-to-day operations, they tend to have flexible schedules and might be open to additional sources of income. Step 2. Build natural connections. Start by engaging in everyday conversations with the store owners. In Margaret's case, it all began with casual chats while shopping for groceries. Don't rush this process. Building a genuine relationship takes time. Focus on understanding the other person's personality, daily rhythms, and family situation. Pay attention to the dynamics that exist in their lives, as well as their financial needs. You can often infer aspects of this from the size of the store and its business hours. Small family-run businesses often need extra income, which makes them perfect candidates for offering assistance. Step 3. Ease into the proposal. When the time feels right, begin to gently introduce the idea of receiving help. Instead of immediately asking for caregiving assistance, start with something small. For example, you might say, "Would you mind helping me carry these heavy bags?" Or, "Could you lend me a hand with something around the house?" These small gestures will lay the groundwork for a natural progression into a more formal arrangement. Once the rapport is established, you can bring up the topic of paid help. Be clear and direct, but also flexible. For instance, Margaret offered Sarah and Mark $900 a month for about 3 hours of work per day, helping with meal preparation and light cleaning. This amount was realistic, as it provided them with a reasonable side income without overburdening them. It was also within Margaret's budget, far more affordable than the $2,000 a month professional care she had initially considered. Step 4. Set clear expectations. Make sure to clearly define the specific tasks you're asking for. In Margaret's case, the tasks were simple and not time-consuming. Prepare basic, easy-to-make meals suitable for the elderly and assist with light housekeeping. It's important to keep things manageable so that the help doesn't interfere with the other person's primary job or family obligations. Also, convey that you're looking for simple, straightforward support, such as light meals rather than complex cooking. This reduces the burden on the other person while ensuring that their help is aligned with your needs. Step 5. Discuss long-term benefits and trust. The final step is to discuss the long-term nature of the relationship and what it could evolve into. Margaret's offer of a $10,000 reward wasn't just about the money. It was a gesture of trust and recognition for the ongoing support she had received. By offering this, Margaret communicated that this was not just a temporary arrangement, but a long-term commitment that would continue to grow. The reward is symbolic of a much deeper bond, a way of saying, "I trust you, and I appreciate you for being there when I needed it most." It also helps to make the arrangement feel less transactional and more like a partnership based on mutual respect. However, there are important considerations to keep in mind with this method. One of the most critical is to avoid relying too heavily on a single person or family for help. Circumstances change. People move, face personal challenges, or may no longer be available. If your entire arrangement hinges on one individual, an unexpected change can leave you scrambling for alternatives. That's why it's wise to have multiple candidates in mind or maintain connections with others in your community who might step in if needed. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Another essential step is to formalize any monetary agreements in writing. Even the most well-intentioned arrangements can lead to misunderstandings if expectations are not documented. Drafting a simple written agreement helps prevent disputes and ensures both parties feel secure about their roles and responsibilities. The beauty of this method is its flexibility. It allows you to deepen the relationship gradually. If over time you find that the dynamic isn't quite working, you can naturally and gracefully create distance without the rigidity of a formal caregiving contract. This stands in stark contrast to specialized care services, which often require long-term commitments that are challenging to break if the arrangement isn't satisfactory. Above all, this approach fosters a mutually beneficial relationship. For seniors, it provides the necessary care and companionship in a way that feels warm and human. For the helpers, it offers a valuable source of supplemental income that fits seamlessly into their existing routines. This mutual exchange builds a foundation of trust, ensuring that both parties feel valued and supported. Happiness in old age isn't found in expensive care or fancy facilities, Margaret Davis often reflects. It's found in meaningful connections and the freedom to live life with dignity. The traditional options, living with children, hiring professional helpers, or moving into a nursing home, may be the default choices, but they aren't necessarily the best answers for everyone. Margaret's experience with Sarah and Mark offers a refreshing alternative. At an affordable monthly cost of just $900, she found a more fulfilling life than any traditional care option could provide. The brilliance of this method lies in its natural, human approach. It provides the warmth and authenticity that professional services often lack, the balanced independence that living with family can't always offer, and the personal freedom that is often lost in nursing homes. It's an ideal solution for those seeking care without compromising their dignity or individuality. That said, this is just one example. Your circumstances may call for a different approach, and that's okay. The key is to think creatively and flexibly, tailoring a solution that fits your unique needs. Don't feel constrained by the options that society often presents as the only paths forward. Even if you're healthy now, it's never too early to start preparing for the future. Build meaningful relationships within your neighborhood and community. These connections can become invaluable later in life. The sense of trust and support that comes from knowing your neighbors may well be one of the greatest assets you can cultivate for your later years. Margaret's story is a testament to the power of ingenuity and human connection. It reminds us that growing older doesn't have to mean sacrificing independence or joy. Instead, with a little creativity and proactive planning, you can design a life that honors your needs, your dignity, and your happiness. As we wrap up, let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've explored today. From Margaret's journey, we've learned that traditional caregiving options, while common, aren't always the best fit for everyone. Her innovative approach to finding care through community connections reminds us that flexibility, trust, and creativity can lead to solutions that truly honor our independence, dignity, and happiness in later life. So, what have you learned from Margaret's story? Has it inspired you to think differently about aging or caregiving? We'd love to hear from you. Share one thing you've learned from this video and how you plan to bring it into practice in your own life. Your thoughts might inspire someone else to take a step toward creating a better future for themselves or their loved ones. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more valuable insights and inspiring stories about aging, caregiving, and living life to the fullest. Together, let's continue the conversation and empower each other to thrive at every stage of life. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.